So because we are in Netawaka Church right now, I'd like to invite Marilyn. She a little bit talked about Netawaka Church. But Marilyn, you said you came to this church in 1971, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, you talked when. But would you tell us more? How did you join this church? You married to Steve and everything, but would you tell us more story? What was happening?
Well, after I'd been here for a while, they asked if I'd be a Sunday school teacher, and not having grown up attending church regularly, I didn't feel very capable, but I agreed to do the nursery class back then because I figured I could at least learn what they would be learning, and go from there and work my way up. And so that's where I started. I helped with Bible school when we had Bible school, and when we had UMW, I don't know, back in probably in the 80s, I was a district UMW officer for 4 years, program resource person, and so I was at that level for a little while.
So at the time it was Kansas East Conference?
Yes, yes, Kansas East. I've gone, I was a lay leader for several years and went to annual conference several years when it was at Baker University.
Yes.
And John and I, in fact, have gone a time or two together to annual conference there. So it was I enjoyed that. Everything I've done, I've enjoyed. But there's some things now that it's like, it's
different.
I've done my time, but I feel like there's others that probably could do it a little easier than I could now. So, but we've had things that happened in the church over the years. Every year for years we did alumni banquet, which we had downstairs in the basement. And
this basement,
yes. And at times there would be over 100 come to the dinner, and it was a sit-down dinner. And then the ladies of the church would go around and hand serve each one their plate, which was very crowded, I might say. We've had, as UMW, we had mother-daughter teas for a few years, which was really fun. To get your older daughters and younger daughters and sometimes grandmothers as well all together, and had a program. We've had we had UMW, it started out first as UMW Soup Supper, and then it became, as more have passed away and there were less women to do it, we had the men of the church also helped. And we did that soup supper, we determined, for 38 years. And last year was the first year that we didn't do it. But there's just so few of us left now that it's not really feasible for us to physically do it. So we still do harvesters, which helps pass out food to the communities, and anybody that wants to come on the third Monday of each month. And so some of the church members help with that. When we first moved here, there was a United Methodist men's group, and they did things on Saturday mornings a lot of times, but that's all I know about them. And like I said, we had Sunday school, and we had Bible school, and we had Christmas programs. This whole front would be full of children for the Christmas program. The church would be full, and sometimes we'd even have to set people over on the side. So
extra chairs
yes,
over there,
and
yeah.
so those were some amazing memories to see the children do that Christmas story every year. So unfortunately, as all of our children grew up, they didn't stay here, and so the younger generation has all pretty much left us, and so now we've declined in age, and like John, you say you're one of the younger ones, and, and we don't feel so very young, but that's just the way it is. So, but this church has done a lot over the years, and there was a time, probably in the 70s, there were revivals that would be 3 nights in a row, and we would have a speaker that would come and share their testimonies, and there would be a large number in this sanctuary even for those. So church back then was very important in people's lives. And unfortunately, I can't say I see that completely in today's society, which is one of the reasons I think all the churches struggle to build membership. So.
Thank you, Marilyn. So it reminds me of my experience. When I first came to this appointment, Horton, Whiting, and Netawaka, I shared with you before. At that time, I had a list of activity list. Okay, we will try this. But as I got to know you more and more, I was amazed. You already did those 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And I'm glad you had the idea and passion at that time. And I believe that you are physically getting weaker. However, I believe you still have a passion. That's why we still have some attendance at the church. But even though our church building is just stand the same, but I believe our missional context is getting changed. So that's why I think, need to get together and then get some wisdom and idea together. So that's one of the reasons we are doing this conversation. Yes, actually. Okay. Then you talked about Netawaka Church, Marilyn. Then would you tell us more about the community, the city of Netawaka?
Well, I was thinking about the community when we first moved here, and at that time, as I look back now, I feel like it was booming metropolis. It had a lumber yard, it had a grocery store, it had a post office, it had a gas station, it had a restaurant. Yes, all of those things were here. You know, there were 2 churches, there was the big elevator, who the owner was a member here. And so, you know, it sounds like a lot now compared to what it was, what it is now, but there's still 2 churches here, there's still a post office, but because of this community, it wasn't from our church, but there was a lady that grew up in this community, and she came back, and that's how the Netawaka Fitness Center got a lot of its money to be built, was because of her. And so, you know, not everybody moves away and doesn't think of their little town that they grew up in. And so, and there's a doctor's office here in town now. So those are things that are amazing for a little town to have. So that part of it has grown, and I think that's helped Netawaka. I mean, there's still lots of houses. I don't imagine there's very many empty houses here in town. And there are still young families here, but not many attend church. So, but it's more of an older community, but there still are some new young families that move in once in a while. So if a house becomes available, but and Netawaka, back when we first got married, one of the fun things that they did, they had a Netawaka picnic every year.
The city
usually,
community-wise?
and in the park. And there was a concession stand that was built, and the Methodist Church did all the food and served food 3 evenings in a row. I don't remember if it was in the daytime so much, but I know they had activities in the evening. It had a little carnival. It had, the athletic club did a bingo stand, and they had live entertainment. People, kids did all kinds of entertainment, and so, you know, the whole community was probably almost all there back then. And so that was something that was quite an event for a little town. As the young mothers of the town, we did some activities for a few years when the kids were younger for Halloween and for Christmas time, so that it was a community activity. Back when the old gym was still here, it's no longer there. It's been torn down, but we would have those parties there. And so Netawaka's had an active life.
Well, it sounds like there are
Yeah.
lots of activities.
Yeah, it was amazing when I started thinking of all the things that has gone on here. You know, they have baseball games in the summer for the girls and the boys. There used to be a lot of teams. There's not so many now, but they still, up until this year, played. Of course, this year nobody got to play, but
Yes, I think because of what you say, I understand it's different how I feeling about this community and how you feeling about this community.
Yeah.
Because I came here 2016 and then I feel like, wow, this is a good community. It's not a big community, but we have good people, and then everything seems good. But you have more stories before, and then you could see all the, can I say, declining or changes? Yeah, from that time. So, yes, thank you, Marilyn. Yeah. So something magical happened. So we moved to Whiting Church, and then because we're here in Whiting, so I would like to invite Jon to talk about Whiting Church. And how did you join this church? You already talked to us a little bit more at Netawaka Church, and then but would you? I believe there are more stories. So would you tell us some more, Jon?
Oh my! As I said earlier, we joined in '91 when we moved back this way when we were first married, and started looking for a home church. And we really liked the welcoming we had here, and felt it was good for us. So we joined. And at that time, I think the women's group was still meeting. There was a men's group, and they sponsored a pancake feed every year in the spring.
Yes.
And so I started to pitch in and help with that. We had that down in the basement, and it would be full, and there would be lots of people from the community come and fellowship, and it was always good to see everybody. They all seemed to know each other and get along really well, and that was a good time. We eventually moved that out of the basement to the community center once it was finished, just because it was getting so hard for people to get up and down the stairs.
Yes.
And being an older community, an older church, having that kitchen all on one level really helped. Let us to be able to continue to do it, because quite frankly, getting up and down the stairs for many people was just getting to be a physical challenge.
So that's the community building we still have.
Yes, used to be the school.
Yes, high school.
Yeah. And I remember Vacation Bible School. Cheryl and I helped lead one year, and lots of hands to pitch in and help. And it was a week long in the evenings, and in the summers. And then again, we moved that to the community building, more space. It was all on one level. We could feed. Yeah, it was air conditioned, and we could feed the families, and we'd see over 40 kids a night, and feed them dinner, and on the last night feed the kids and the families, And so, and again, everybody pitched in. It wasn't just the Whiting Methodist Church. It was the Netawaka Methodist Church that helped, and the Baptist Church. And so that was a good community-supported event.
Yes.
And before I arrived, and you'll have to talk to some of the old-timers, but they used to have an ice cream social in the summer.
Yes.
Community would come for that. And that was back when you just didn't buy the ice cream at the store. It was you made it at home and brought it.
Yeah.
And so I've heard people talk about that very fondly.
Yes.
And of course, the children's programs, like you mentioned, during the holiday seasons, those are always very special. And I just remember the vacation Bible schools. My kids always enjoyed going to that. Learning and playing the games and making things, and they had a good time. We still have, one year we made walking stones, and I think we still have them in our landscaping around the house.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so I'd like to point those out to the kids. Remember when we did that? Yeah, I remember that. So lots of good memories. And I taught Sunday school upstairs for junior high and high school for many years. Yeah.
Yes.
And I remember, of course, Cheryl, when we were first married, she was working as a nurse in Topeka, and so she had to work some weekends. And so I remember carrying Jacob upstairs in the car seat, setting him down, and the high school girls would kind of help keep him entertained while we tried to do Sunday school for the high schoolers. I can remember, the kids sat pretty good at church. There was always somebody behind them, kind of, but they did pretty well at church. I just always, some very kind, gentle people, loving people, were so good with the kids. Always wanting to know how the kids were doing, what they were up to, genuinely concerned about them and loved them dearly. Keith and Mildred, who were members here for many, many years, they babysat our kids when we were both working. So, that's always a joy to have somebody that in the church, look after your kids when you're working.
Right.
We always felt very good about that. Because they took very good care of the kids and Debbie Goodwin watched our kids too for a time when we were working. So that was you always felt good that those were the people
Someone you
helping
can
you
trust.
raise your kids. You trusted them,
Right.
you knew them, you knew what their background was and where they were coming from, and so that was a good comfort to us and a joy. The membership has dwindled and aged, as with all rural churches and with all churches really. But like I said, the church has remained. It's undergone some storms and tribulations, but it's still here. It's still here. The school's gone, but some of the businesses are gone. But the church is still here. There's still God's presence among the people here.
Yes.
And that gives me comfort. Our Bible studies and the learning we do together in the Advent season and at Lent, that's very special to me. I always enjoy that time together,
Yes.
that learning and sharing and fellowshipping together. That's always been a good thing. Helped me on my faith journey in my development. So I've always appreciated those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was it last year that we had the vacation Bible school with Whiting, Netawaka Methodist Church, and then Baptist Church?
Yeah.
Yes, I remember it was last year. It was a good experience.
Right.
That time I got to know more people from Baptist Church.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yes. And while I was listening to Jon, for me, Jon and Marilyn, you are always working hard for church. You are helping a lot. But back then, you worked more than now. Took care of your kids and everyone. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Jon, to talking about Whiting Church. And would you please introduce Whiting community, Whiting city of Whiting to us? So any highlights you'd like to mention?
Yeah. Of course, my wife grew up here on a dairy farm north of town.
Yes.
And so she has shared a lot of memories of the town with me. Like I said, there used to be a grocery store, and she remembers coming up and the shopkeeper giving candy to the kids. They always wanted to go with mom to the grocery store because they knew they'd get some candy. Of course, Dale Williams had a garage business, and he was always so helpful. Of course, there's the restaurant still. There used to be a bank in town. You know, it's a machine shop that's still here. They still have
Yes.
a small grocery store, so there are some businesses that remain. The elevator is no longer here. It's somebody bought it. It's no longer a business, but you know, it still remains. You know, the community supports the kids' baseball and softball in the summer. You know, they still are able to do that. You know, it's got a lot of grit and toughness, and just kind of like the community building, the old school. You know, that a lot of that work was just done with volunteers to rehab that building and make it a community center again. There were a lot of volunteer hours put into that, and so you know that shows that people care about their community. They want a place together. They want to keep what they can going, and so it's like most rural communities. You know, as the economy has changed, it certainly has affected them. But again, they're still there, and the church is still here, and is a presence. Still two churches. You know, a lot of businesses are gone, but the churches are still here.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Jon. So I.